Greetings, beloved. We're back here again, and I have something to share with you. I just will use a moment of your time, although my intuition is just asking me not to rush through this one, so bear with me, because I'm hoping that there will be more in it for you that way. I'm trusting that. So I'm going to start off with a story. We're talking about perspective today. Perspective because, I'm all about the growth mindset, and we grow through our perspectives, and we each have our own perspective, which means we each have our own opportunities for growth that look different than the others, right? But sometimes we can find ourselves blinded by finding our own, blinded from finding our own formula because of our perspective. And perspective can be blinded. So let me show you how. I'm going to start off with the story. So I was mentoring a young man some time ago. And he was in the 9th grade, right? So in the 9th grade in public school, he was asking, for me to help him out with his, with just finishing up his homework, and I was all good with that. And so I said, how can I help you? And so he begins to write out his formula, his way of formation in order to solve the equation. Right? So he wanted to look for a solution. And his formula looked something like this. I can't remember exactly what it looked like, so bear with me. But, something like this. Let's see. There might have been like something in there. I don't know. Yeah, something like that, right? And so maybe, something like that, right? Well, the point is that when he began explaining to me, because I said, okay, well, how can I help you? You show me how it is that you do this. Because he automatically went through this whole, we do the new math. And I'm like, okay, well, math is math. Yes, there are different ways to see a pattern, but how do you do this, right? He starts doing all kind of stuff that I was unfamiliar with, and that's fine. I learn from my students all the time. We're all teachers, so I was in a position to learn. However, I had opted to pass on this one because what he was doing through his vocabulary and his rhetoric is he was breaking up the families. Not only was he getting a different answer when he was doing this, but he was literally like, you break this family up and you put it over here and you put this family over here and this is a family. I'm like, you're breaking up the families. I was taught that when we are to look to begin our order of operations, the first thing that we do is put the families together, right? So we have the integers, which are whole numbers, right? So we have the integers together, and then we're going to move and put the fractions together, and so these are our integers, and then we'll have our exponents. Our integers are whole numbers, which is why we put them by themselves away from the fractions that manage themselves a little bit differently, right? When we're looking to configure a problem. It's just an easier way to compute things to get our solution, is to put our families together first and then go through our order of operations. However, he was sharing with me that he was being taught something different. Now, let me just make sure that my camera's still on. Okay. So yes, he was being taught something different and was actually getting a different answer. And so I could not accept this teaching. I had to decide for myself, did I want to, for one, learn this perspective, right? Because once we learn something, we cannot unlearn it. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. So there's that. And then, is it true? Is the solution that he was coming to one that I could agree with, one that resonated with me, and one that I would be able to build with? Right? Now, he was in the position at the time where he couldn't share with me how this would be functionally useful the way that he was doing his math. I could. So I opted to reject his teaching, the teaching that he was given, and I opted to, offer him to share with him my method. But the point here is that with mathematics, a perspective can be shifted simply by changing someone's order of operations. And that can begin with how we configure our values, our value system. Even to consider an integer, to keep that in mind. -1 or 0 or 1. These are whole numbers. They're absolute. They're absolute. Even -1 is the same value as 1. It's a whole number. But once we start considering a different way to look at value, say, for example, like this, instead of 1, we start considering 1/10, or even like that, 1/2, right? We start considering fractions. Now we start to build and computate in our real world in a fractionated way as well. We start to consider that ourselves can be of a fraction as well, right? And at that point, one might even have the opportunity to share a perspective like this, which will then be considered for use of this. This can be a language of shifting the way that we perceive the world and our value, because we are operating on the integration, the collaboration of mind and brain. And that's how we are creating the world around us, through our perspective, through what we have been programmed into our brain, and then how we perceive that program through our mind. So our brain will take in the opportunity to learn an order of operations, and our mind will take that order of operations and create a perspective. And that perspective is how we will continue to generate our energy and build our world around us. The way we see the problem is the problem, and that's how we will figure out our solutions, right? So as you probably know by now, if you've ever seen any video of mine, that I'm goaling myself and my circles of influence in a growth mindset. And so there is a mathematics for a growth mindset. We're born here on Earth, if you are a human listening to my voice. And the Earth has its own methods of operations, right? And we find that as things grow through plants, as ideas grow, as projects grow, as anything grows, there are certain ingredients that are necessary for the whole formula. I'll put it that way, right? So we have different factors, and the way that the earth grows is something like this. So we start off with nothing at all. There's always 0, which we don't talk enough about, in my opinion. There's 0, and then we start with a measure of 1. because this is what mathematics is. It's our agreement of a measure, which is why it's important, because it will create the measure of our value, including self-value. So we come from nothing to something of one, whatever that measure looks like. And then we find that that one mirrors itself. Okay? It mirrors itself. So after finding that we have now two with that mirror, then our wonderful natural growth pattern would mirror itself again. Now there are formulas. There is a formula to share with you. It's called the Fibonacci formula. If you were to Google it or something like that, but it goes long before Fibonacci. This is growth. This is growth. This is through the mirror how we grow. And it's not a complicated equation. You know, it's 0 plus 1, then that equals 1. Then we have 1 measure plus the same measure. So we take this and move it over here. And then we have 2. Then we take the same measure and we here and move it over here. And that ends up being 3. So these are measures, you know, and I just wanted to show you that it's not a complicated formula. You know, you could do it, you could YouTube it, you know, it's quite easy to just draw it out yourself even without the formula. Because what we're doing is just creating mirrors. And then what we find is that life, see, is that right? Yes. Okay. That life will project itself in our 3D world, in the way that we perceive our imagery, just like this. So, 1 second. Okay. Just like this. Because what I want to show you is that it definitely takes 2, right? Before life begins to move on and project further into our awareness, we find that it started off here. I want to make it sure you can see it, though. With 1 and 2, right? You saw me do that with the mirror. But then after we have the mirror, we have this radial type of motion, right? That draws from here. Sure, right? Yeah. It draws from here. Oh, that's not working right for me. Oh, I see why. Pardon me. Like, what's going on? Okay. So it draws from here. Oh, I did my mirroring wrong. That's why. You see, it'll always show you what's up. So let me do that again. 1, 2, right? I'm not doing that right. Yes. Mirrors. Nature always keeps us on track. By showing us our dimensions of ourselves. It's beautiful. But if we just remember to consider what's in the mirror, right? See, last time I went up and I should have went down. Right? And then this next mirror of this group over here. and this top will mirror this over here. See, it's through the mirrors of perspective that we find growth happens successfully, what I would even call naturally. Okay? So I just wanted to share real briefly how our perspective matters in the way that we perceive the world, and how there is an actual natural course of things. There's the mirror, right? There's the mirror to go from here to here. And what I'd like to even make more highlight on is that shape of the rainbow that is not accomplished until there is the doubling. So it takes two to create that measurement of growth. Okay? One for beginning, but two creates the measurement of growth. And so with that being said, I just want to emphasize here that perspective on how we do our mathematics, how we see our symbols. These things are downloaded into our brain through symbols and agreement, right? Through agreement that this is truth. And then we create from there. Because when we're dealing with our fractions as the basis of our value system, say for example with something like this, then we'll find that our symbols on how we perceive other things in life, even though we may not be intentionally going that route, if we're practiced enough, our mind is going to address everything in our perspective to be the same way. And we might even find that that we sell ourselves a little bit short. And what I mean by that is as a fraction. Because you see, we have this beautiful symbol here that a lot of us already know is intended to strike some chord of infinity, right? Because we're looking at these lines that are ever going. It's also regenerative energy, so all of these wonderful things. And I'll even add this here, because this is the source of the matter that flushes through these circles, right? These mirrors. And we have this light that flushes through. So this is really what we're dealing with when we're talking about integrity. We're talking about a whole system. And this is the light that shines through that system. Now, if you notice that symbol has been fractionated. It's been fractioned. I don't know if that's a word, but it's been fractioned. It has been broken apart, right? With our dollar. Our dollar. When we have agreed to put our value, our time, our energy into this, we're dealing with our lore that is taking our energy and we can even go a little bit further, right? So this is a fraction. You notice this is a part of our whole, right, of integrity. But even if we were to break that apart even further, and this is all happening with agreement, right? What is that value? So first we can find that our whole energy concept can be harnessed. Our energy can be harnessed through lore of the dollar. But we can actually find that, if we are willing to allow our power to go even further into a fraction. So now from here, now we're going to fraction it even smaller. Now we're dealing with harnessing our senses. So first our lure, our desire can be harnessed, that energy, and then our sense Our senses, how we perceive and how we draw in, how we absorb the rest of our world through our vision, our smell, our hearing, our taste, our feeling, our intuition, our senses, our energy can be harnessed all together once we're agreeing to that. The wealthy don't even consider money talk. The dollar is not of conversation when working with the wealthy. That is not the commodity. But this is the commodity, the dollar, lure, desire, as well as senses, for those who are willing to agree to that. So I want to share more about the growth mindset because this is just the beginning. I've already talked a little bit, I touched on my thoughts on the zero, right? And how we don't pay enough attention to the zero, in my opinion. The zero comes before the one. And that is where I perceive that we should begin. In our efforts to think to live, in our efforts to grow with a growth mindset. We want to start at the root. We want to go back down to ground zero, because zero here, it's a difference than a zero and an O, right? An O is like more of a circle. A zero, however, is where we've taken this from the Z, from the last letter of the alphabet. Now we're going to take the O, and we're going to move on into the next language of zero, because this is now, we're seeing, a elongated version of that O in the alphabet. O, and we know that the O, that sound, is a resonant of a certain type of power, right? So, we won't even go to that. But when we hit the next language to build upon with mathematics, that O is elongated. It's given polars, right? And this elongation is the beginning before we find that we are at one. So we start at zero, and then we have one, and then we have the curvature of the two and creation, where we are now able to move into creation. You see, signs and symbols are for a conscious mind, and we are woke. If you are in my field of hearing my voice, right? We are woke. We're working on knowledge every day. And what I would suggest is that thinking to live, deciding, making the decision, the free will choice that I am going to think for myself. I am going to have an order of operations that is for myself. And then, so that would be ground zero, right? That would be zero. And then I'm going to think to live, right? Then I'm going to think to live. Then I'm going to look to my mirrors. My mirrors, right? This is the growth mindset. But there's more to this. There's more to this. And I want to share, because this is just part one of sharing ground zero, right? I have more I want to share about ground zero, where we begin in our mind to reformulate our own process, our own value system, our own way of materializing the world around us. So if you're with me, contact me somehow that you are woke. Okay, put somewhere where you're woke, and let me know how to reach you, and we're going to connect with the second part of this, because I'll be presenting that, and I want to do that part live, right? Because you are relevant to me. You are my mirror. In Lakish Alaken, I am another yourself. Be you, stay true, and share what you do. Peace.